Well, because we're finally early for one of these videos, you've got over 2 days to pick up Bullseye in the Spotlight Cache or in the collector's shop with your tokens before we move on to the next week. So let's talk about the card, get into the data, if it's a good card, and give you some decks to play to help you complete the weekend missions and get those tokens for yourself. So Bullseye, let's just get into it first from the data and untap the last 7 days, sitting at a popularity rate of 14.4%, which is crazy. That's really high. Let me... as an example here, that's a pretty high popularity rate. Comparing it to the data, let me give you some cards that seem to still be everywhere. Iron Man is at a 13%, Psylocke at 13%, Victoria Hand at 14%, Mystique at 14%, right? And then we have all the others like Scorn and Gambit and MODOK and Collector and all the cards that would go along with Bullseye. Magic is at a 14%, right? So it's sitting up there. Red Guardian at 17%. It's sitting up there with these cards that we see everywhere that are just staples in the meta. I mean, Shang-Chi is only at an 18% popularity rate. So Bullseye is already up there so quickly, which makes sense to me because this card seems to be everywhere. It seems that you've probably already spent your resources on Bullseye. It seems like a lot of people are really excited about this card. As he's kind of popped off, he's sitting at a win rate of 52.4% and a cube rate of 0.2 positive cubes, which again just, shows like a strong card. Nothing totally earth-shattering, but just a strong card. So let's talk about my experience with the card. What rating do I give it now that we've got the data? And then we'll get into some deck ideas for you. This is going to be a short video because my rating is I spent my keys on it, and I think it's a really good card. My current rating of it is that it's a five-star card, and I have the potential out of 4-star. I'll get to that in a second. But into the 5-star category, I went back and forth. I originally had it at a 4-star. This is just whole star ratings, no half stars. So it's either 4 or 5. And I bumped it up to a 4-star card or a 5-star card because of what this card does for the decks that it's in. The Bullseye deck that I was playing from Alex Kosha that I made a video about is the deck that got me to got me over the final hump to infinite because I just kept playing it because it was that strong. I mean, the amount of times that you can discard and bump up Collector, bump up Morbius, like it just builds and builds and builds, and it's a great addition to discard. It's like a MODOK without having MODOK if your conditions are set up right. And the way that it just has an option to power scale pretty quickly, especially when you run those decks that have Dawkin and Armzola, which, also really, really fun decks. It's a fun card to play, and its impact is just kind of in the right decks, in the decks that people are playing right now. Its impact is just so large because Meek goes up, the Collector goes up, Morbius goes up, and then the opponent's cards go down. Its power that it adds to the board is pretty dramatic and pretty significant. Dawkin might go up with Bullseye, that type of thing. It's not even necessarily the negative power that he causes to the opponent. It's the increase in power that he adds, right? So in other settings where he's not boosting the Collector, right, and just typical discard, I don't think Bullseye is going to have a spot. I think that he has found his spot, and the spot he's in is really, really strong. It's kind of impressive how quickly Alex cooked up that deck and how consistent it has been for me, and even when playing against it, it seems to be really, really consistent. It's just a strong card, what it enables you to do in discard. It opens up a new type of discard, right? The similar way that Hela is technically a discard deck, but is definitely not in the same realm as like APOC discard. I think this new Collector Bullseye discard Dawkin deck is a lot of fun, and it's actually really, really fun to play. So why do I think he's going to go down to a 4-star card? The initial thought was like, oh, he's so good, I think that he's going to be nerfed. I actually don't think that. Maybe his negative affliction might be nerfed a little bit, but even that, you're restricted to the amount of cards that you can discard and the amount of cards that are on the board. So at most, that's 7 cards that you can discard, and then your opponent has to have 7 cards on the board. So that's technically negative 14 power, which, when you say it that way, is a lot. However, it's spread out. Nonetheless, I could see that getting nerfed. But the reason that I have the potential going down to a 4-star is because this week, he is just fun. He's new, he's fun, the decks he's in are popping off, he's great to play, and then that's going to get old and stale really quickly, and he doesn't have the diversity that something like Morbius or Corvus Glaive or Blade has, right? So Blade fits in dump decks for one-cost dump decks with Hitmonkey and Dracula. Dracula Dump, that's what it's called. He fits in regular discard. He fits in Hella discard. He fits in this Bullseye discard. He fits in Collector discard, right? He has flexibility, where Bullseye, I'm not seeing that flexibility. I don't think he's going to end up in a Hella discard deck. He's not going to end up in a Ajax deck. I just don't think so, because the conditions in which his power is dramatically worth the investment it takes to get to the point where you can activate him is only felt in the decks that he's in right now, is my feeling. So as things get stale and things moves on, I think is going to be similar to Doom 2099. Like, that deck is good, and it's pretty narrow, and people play that deck, and it's straightforward, and it's played, and it wins. There's going to be that Bullseye deck, so to speak, that's out there. I don't think the diversity is going to remain, and because of that, I think the boringness of it, so to speak, might drag him down in popularity rates, while his competitiveness and his actual power remains still consistent in the decks that he's in. So that's my opinion, but what the heck do I know? Not much. But so let's just talk about decks based on the data. And so there's this one that has the higher cube rate of the two. So here's this one that has both the higher cube rate and the higher win rate. This is a deck that I played in my video. It's the Alex Kosha Bullseye deck. He cooked with this one. Man, Frigga stocks going up like crazy. And man, I realize, and thank you to the people who commented, I do not know how to play Dokken. I also don't know how to play Collector. The amount of comments are like, you could have played this way. Wow, you were right. And then I took your advice, and I reached infinite in like an afternoon really easily, because this combination between Dokken and Frigga is really, really strong. Kind of interesting, that at least just a thought on the way that I played this deck is I just would stop thinking. I was like, oh yeah, Collector gets big and Morbius gets big, and I would be too lazy to do the math to think how many times is Collector going to be hit, how much does he grow. I just get lazy in playing it. But my goodness, is it really, really strong. Like I mentioned, it took me to infinite in an afternoon rather easily. I've been kind of goofing off on the ladder, and then this deck was just so good that it was like almost not thinking, just consistently could get 4 and 8 cube games and climb the ladder really easily. So that is this deck. It's pretty straightforward. Really, really essential cards here is MODOK, because you don't have a lot of ways to target Swarm with Scorn in hand. You're like, you have Blade and you have Gambit if you're lucky, but Colleen is always going to hit Scorn or Blade himself, or the Muramasa Shard, however you say that. Meek, potentially, right? The situations in which Colleen is going to target Swarm is going to be rare, or if Swarm is already discarded. So MODOK is a way to get those Swarms, if you haven't hit them yet, to be able to be discarded by Bullseye. If not, the only cards you're going to be able to discard is Scorn and the Muramasa Shard if you have one in hand. So a dramatic less amount of discards, because you were lacking something like a Moon Knight or something like that that's going to target this one. So then we have this other version of the deck that has been popping up after the Regis video with Arnim Zola and Dokken with Grandmaster. And my goodness, is it fun to play. In my experience, this one that I mentioned earlier with Frigga and MODOK was dramatically more consistent, where this one with Arnim Zola and Dokken and Grandmaster was just a lot more fun, because Dokken is just a goofy card to play, for lack of better words. What a ridiculous card that just scales so dramatically. It's like a better version of the guy with Stormbreaker, Beta Ray Bill, right? He just scales in such a dramatic way when you have Zola and Grandmaster and all those Muramasa Shards being discarded. So here's the 2 decks. I did not include any others, because if you go on Untapped and looked, they're just different versions of this deck, right? Some throw in Moon Girl, some throw in Moon Knight and Proxima Midnight and those types of things. It's just you get like 1 or 2 cards missing from this because people don't have those cards, which makes sense. And so then they're just rotating in a card that they have and adjusting it. I think if you're going the Dokken route and you're missing a card like Frigga, Moon Girl is a way to benefit from that as well, right? You're not going to be able to curve it out the same way that you could with Frigga, and you have to have the cards in your hand. However, you can get more Muramasa Shards. Sure, you only have 1 Dokken that's scaling instead of 2, but also, Moon Girl will buff up Collector. More cards for MODOK to discard if you haven't. That type of thing. More 1 costs or 0 costs, whatever it is. So Moon Girl is a good option. But those are the decks they're pretty straightforward. What is my opinion? Do I think you should pick up Bullseye in the final moments that you can? I hate this part of the video. I hate telling people what to do with their resources. But you look forward in the rest of the month, in February, even the next week with Ares, and I'll talk about him briefly here at the end of the video. To me, none of the cards seem to be as impactful as Bullseye has been. I was ho-hum on Bullseye. I was kind of mid on him. I'm even more mid on Ares, and I was really kind of blown away with how just powerful Bullseye is. Like, if you've got the Collector and Morbius and even not, let's just say Collector and Morbius, and you've discarded a Swarm and you play Bullseye and you activate him, like, it's almost a guaranteed win. You know, guarantee as much as you can in Marvel Snap. Like, it's a snap condition with how just consistent Bullseye is and the power that he provides in these decks that you're playing with Collector and Morbius and Dacian. So I recommend it if you've got the resources. He's a card that is worth getting. So that being said, is it worth gambling your keys in this week with the Spotlight Cash that we have with Marvel Boy and Kyera? I'm hoping to get another video out tomorrow or the day after that about those two cards. If you don't have them, I think it's worth gambling. I think that those are two actually rather strong cards, Marvel Boy being stronger than Kyera. But even still, they're strong cards to me. And I think Zoo is honestly a slept-on archetype. So like, depending on your collection level and what you're playing and your play type and all those things that I don't know and only you do, if you were to go to Bullseye, like if I were in somebody's shoes who had a little bit of a lower collection level, imagining that they don't have these cards, and I went for Bullseye, and I didn't get Bullseye and I got Marvel Boy or Kyera instead, I would be able to say, well, bummer, I wanted the new card. However, this is a new card to me. I can pivot, and now I can go play a competitive Zoo deck. Because you actually can. Zoo is a pretty slept-on archetype, which you actually have a lot of the cards at a lower collection level. So I do think it is worth getting. I don't like telling people what to do. I also don't ever recommend gambling in any capacity, even outside of Marvel Snap. But Bullseye definitely is a strong card. So, like I mentioned, those videos coming on the Zoo deck, which has been dramatically surprising to me. Very consistent. And then another meme deck that I've been trying to pull off that has been just excruciating to make happen. Have not gotten to work a single time, but my goodness, is it fun. So subscribe for those videos coming. We're almost at 500, so I appreciate all 499 of you who've subscribed and keep watching my videos. I appreciate it. Subscribing, leaving comments, liking, that does help me. So appreciate every single one of you, as I always do. And thanks for watching.